401ks, what are they? How do they work? Why do they exist? But first, here's a breakdown of average and median 401k balances by age. Now, if you just panicked a little bit, maybe because your numbers are way smaller than this, I get it. Take a breath. It is possible to catch up. I was way behind too. My name's Christian Bell, and here we talk about all things personal finance. In this video, we'll cover what 401ks are, why they exist, and what their advantages and disadvantages are. We'll also go over why I left money on the table in my own 401k on purpose. So a 401k is simply a retirement plan that's sponsored by your employer. And a main reason they exist is to encourage people to save for their own retirement. Another reason is to shift more of the burden and the risk of funding a retirement from the employer to their employees, but we're not going to get into that here. Now, not all companies will offer a 401k, but if yours does, you probably want to take part, and we'll get into why in a minute. For self-employed people, there's something called a solo 401k, which essentially follows the same rules we're covering here. So when you sign up for a 401k, you agree to have some percent of each paycheck deposited directly into an investment account. Now, arguably the biggest advantage of a 401k is the employer match. This means that if your employer offers a match, because not all of them do, they contribute additional money based on how much you contribute. Usually this means employers will match some percent of your contributions up to a specific portion of your salary, or sometimes matching your contributions up to a certain dollar amount. If this sounds pretty good, that's because it really can be. So if you don't take advantage of your employer match, you're essentially leaving free money on the table. Matching contributions can be a sweet deal for employees, but you do have to watch out for vesting, which is basically how much ownership you have. Firstly, your own contributions are always 100% vested, so they're yours no matter what. Your vesting in matching contributions from your employer is controlled by something called a vesting schedule. One common approach is to have how much you're vested go up by some percent for every year of employment. And it usually takes around 5 years or so to become 100% vested. Why do employers do this? It's essentially a way for them to incentivize their employees to stick around for at least a couple years. Because, well, recruiting, hiring, and training new employees is apparently very pricey. Another big plus of 401ks are the tax advantages. Like IRAs, there are traditional and Roth flavors of 401ks, and the tax advantages are pretty similar. For traditional 401ks, contributions are made with before-tax dollars. So making contributions lowers your taxable income for the year. For Roth 401ks, they're made with after-tax dollars. However, employer matching contributions are always before tax. That's regardless of if your own contributions are before or after tax. Then, for both types, while the money is in the 401k, you don't pay taxes on earnings. Then for distributions, for traditional 401ks, that's when you pay income taxes. That's on both the contributions and the earnings. For Roth 401ks, qualified distributions are tax-free. That's no taxes on both the contributions and the earnings. What's a qualified distribution? One way is that the account has been open for at least 5 years and you're at least age 59 and a half. So those are some of the advantages, but what about disadvantages? One big disadvantage of 401ks are the fees. They're usually a combination of administrative, individual service, and investment fees. And the total range for all these fees can vary wildly, from 0.2% on the low end to over 5%. Those percentages might seem small, but compounding really magnifies how much that actually costs you, potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars over your lifetime. Unfortunately, you can't really do much about administrative fees, and you're kind of stuck with individual service fees if you need the service, like taking out a 401k loan. But you do control which investments you select within your 401k. The key here is a preference for investments with low expense ratios. An expense ratio is the sum of fees for an investment for a year given as a percentage. Disclosing 401k fees is required by law, so make sure to actually read the fine print. It really does matter. There's a great quote from John Bogle, the founder of Vanguard. The miracle of compounding returns is overwhelmed by the tyranny of compounding costs. Another disadvantage is your investment choices are fairly limited. Your employer and the 401k plan administrator decide what investment options you have to choose from. Usually this means mutual funds, so there's some choice, but not nearly as much as, for example, something like an IRA. One thing to mention here, though, is target date funds, which are funds that generally shift their allocation to stocks and bonds based on what year they're targeting for retirement. This helps you stay in a more risk-appropriate and balanced allocation with very minimal effort on your part. 401ks also have an early withdrawal penalty. There's a 10% penalty on withdrawals before age 59 and a half. This is in addition to normal income taxes on traditional 401k withdrawals, although some exceptions do exist. There are contribution limits to 401ks. For 2023, they are $22,500, plus an additional $7,500 for employees age 50 or over. That's called a catch-up contribution. Because you might have multiple 401ks, maybe from previous jobs, this limit is per person. There's also a separate limit on total employer plus employee contributions. For 2023, it's $66,000, or $73,500 with catch-up contributions. The IRS usually updates these limits every year. Some 401k plans also allow taking out a loan, up to the lesser of 50% of your vested balance, or $50,000. In this case, you're essentially paying interest back to yourself, although there's a lot of rules and nuance around this, so whether it's a good option for you is highly dependent on your personal situation. You may be wondering, since it's pretty common for employees to change jobs every few years, what happens to my 401k at my old company? You basically have 4 choices. My favorite choice is to move your 401k to your new employer's plan. Obviously, your new job must offer a 401k, but if they do, this is a great choice because it avoids immediate taxes and it preserves the tax-advantaged status. Another good option is a tax-free rollover to a different retirement account. Often that's an IRA. There are strict rules for this, for example, things like a 60-day time window. But this one also avoids immediate taxes, and again, it preserves that tax-advantaged status. A third choice is leaving the 401k with the old employer. They have to allow this, and there are lots of rules and nuances here. For example, maybe no new contributions are allowed, or potential fees or minimums. So definitely read the fine print. This can sometimes be an okay option if you don't want to deal with the hassle and the old employer's 401k plan is well managed. Lastly, you could withdraw the money, also called cashing out. You usually only want to do this if you really need the money because there might be tax consequences, like potentially that 10% penalty tax. Now, it might sound like a mistake, but I've actually been in a situation where I didn't contribute enough for my full 401k match, even though I could have, and I did it on purpose. The specifics are a little involved, but it essentially comes down to risk. There was a chance that I would need that money to pay a pretty huge bill, and so I needed easy access to it. As we saw, 401ks have early withdrawal penalties, and so for me, in this particular situation, I made the safer choice, the choice that prioritized my own mental health. This way, I wasn't stressing every day about what would happen if I had to pay that huge bill. And I do realize that this choice cost me some free money, specifically that portion of my employer match. So yeah, sometimes these choices aren't so simple. They can be a little involved. Now, if you're not in a situation like that or something similar, it probably makes more sense to contribute at least enough to get your full employer match if they offer one. But what do you think? Does your company offer a 401k? Is there a match? Do you think a traditional or Roth makes more sense? Let me know in the comments. That's all for today. Make sure to like and subscribe and share with a friend who needs to know about this. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. Bye!